More than 80% of drivers damage their cars without even realizing it. And if you drive an automatic, there's a good chance you're doing at least one of these things right now. After researching mechanic reports, repair data, and common failure patterns across the US, one thing became very clear. In 2026, cars are more advanced, but they are also far less forgiving. Transmissions shift faster, engines run hotter, and electronics track behavior constantly. That means small habits that felt harmless years ago are now quietly shortening vehicle life. Mechanics across the country are seeing the same trend over and over again. Cars failing earlier, not because they're poorly built, but because of everyday driving behavior owners don't even think about. What makes this scary is that none of these mistakes feel dangerous while you're doing them. They feel normal. But months or years later, they show up as the biggest repair bills drivers face. Stay with me, because the final mistakes are the most common ones, and once you know them, they're also the easiest to fix.
15. The 1-second shift that destroys transmissions. This usually happens in driveways or parking lots. You back out, you're slightly rolling, and you shift into drive without fully stopping. I watched a neighbor do this every morning while rushing to work. The car seemed fine for years. Then one day it started hesitating. Inside an automatic transmission, clutch packs are designed to engage smoothly in one direction at a time. When you shift while rolling, those parts are forced to fight against motion that hasn't stopped yet. That shock creates wear you can't feel immediately. Over time, seals harden, friction material thins, and shifts become rough. In 2026 vehicles, electronic shifting reacts faster, which actually increases internal stress during rushed gear changes. One full stop before shifting removes that shock completely. It costs nothing and adds years of transmission life. Most failures tied to this habit don't show up right away, which is why drivers keep doing it. If this felt familiar, the next mistake affects even careful drivers too. And if this felt harmless, wait until you hear what the next mistake does without making any noise at all. 14. This AC button is quietly killing your car. The recirculation button confuses more drivers than almost any control. On hot days, many people leave fresh air mode on while blasting the AC. I once rode with a friend who complained his AC never felt cold enough. The system was constantly trying to cool hot outside air instead of reusing cooled cabin air. That forces the compressor to work harder, increases fuel use, and shortens system life. But leaving recirculation on all the time is also a mistake. In cooler or humid weather, moisture builds up, windows fog, and defrosting becomes weaker. Modern AC systems in 2026 are smaller and more efficient, but also less tolerant of misuse. The correct approach is simple. Use recirculation in extreme heat to cool faster. Switch to fresh air when humidity or fog appears. That balance reduces stress and extends component life. Many compressors fail early, not because they're weak, but because drivers unknowingly overwork them daily. And if this surprised you, the next mistake is even more common. Most drivers think this only affects comfort, but the next mistake damages something far more expensive. 13. Driving on empty is costing you thousands. Running low on fuel feels normal, especially when prices fluctuate, but modern fuel systems don't like it. I once helped a coworker whose car stalled on the highway even though the tank wasn't empty. The fuel pump had overheated over time. In most vehicles, the fuel pump sits inside the tank and relies on gasoline for cooling and lubrication. When fuel levels stay low, that cooling disappears. At the same time, sediment and debris at the bottom of the tank get pulled into the system. In 2026 cars, fuel injectors are more precise than ever, which makes them more sensitive to contamination. Low fuel also increases condensation, especially in colder climates, which can lead to rough starts and fuel delivery problems. Keeping the tank above a quarter full protects the pump, injectors, and overall reliability. Most fuel pump failures don't happen suddenly. They are cooked slowly by habits like this.
And speaking of warnings drivers ignore, the next mistake literally lights up your dashboard. And the warning sign for the next mistake is literally glowing on your dashboard.
12. Dashboard lights most drivers ignore until it's too late. Many drivers treat warning lights like suggestions. I once heard someone say, "If it still drives, it's fine." That mindset is expensive. Warning lights exist to catch problems early, before damage becomes severe. A check engine light could mean a loose gas cap, but it could also signal misfires, overheating transmissions, or oil pressure issues. In modern cars, computers can limit performance to protect components, which hides symptoms while damage continues quietly. Transmission temperature lights warn before fluid breaks down. Oil pressure lights warn before lubrication failure destroys an engine in minutes. Ignoring these alerts doesn't make the issue disappear, it just delays the repair until it costs more. Scanning codes early is fast and inexpensive. In 2026 vehicles, ignoring warning lights is one of the most common reasons small issues turn into major repairs. These lights are not there to annoy you, they are there to save you money. And if you ignore them, you're probably skipping this next habit too. Ignoring this often leads directly into the next mistake most automatic drivers swear doesn't matter. 11. Parking without this brake is a hidden transmission killer. Many automatic drivers never use the parking brake. I used to do the same until a mechanic showed me why it matters. Inside the transmission is a small metal piece called a parking pawl. Its job is to hold the car in place when parked. It was never designed to support the full weight of the vehicle, especially on hills. When you skip the parking brake, all that weight rests on that tiny part. Over time, it wears down. Drivers later notice clunking sounds or difficulty shifting out of park. In some cases, the pawl fails and the car can roll even while in park. Repairing it often requires removing the transmission, turning a small part into a large labor bill. Using the parking brake first removes that stress completely. It takes 2 seconds and protects internal components for years. This damage happens slowly and silently, which is why so many drivers miss it, and the next mistake causes damage just as quietly. And the next habit causes damage even when your car is barely moving. 10. The fuel-saving trick that wrecks your drivetrain. Coasting in neutral feels smart to many drivers. I once rode with someone who did it on every downhill stretch. In modern cars, it actually wastes fuel. When you stay in gear and lift off the accelerator, the engine cuts fuel almost completely. That's built in. When you shift into neutral, the engine must idle to stay running, which means it keeps burning fuel. On top of that, you lose engine braking. That puts more strain on brakes and reduces control if traffic changes suddenly. Shifting back into drive while moving also creates unnecessary drivetrain shock. In 2026 vehicles with adaptive transmissions, this constant switching can confuse shift logic and accelerate wear. Drivers who do this often complain about early brake wear and rough shifts later. 9. Cold starts that shave years off your engine. Cold mornings are where long-term damage begins. I watched a neighbor start his car in winter and immediately rev the engine hard. It sounded powerful, but it was hurting the car. When engines and transmissions are cold, fluids are thick and slow to circulate. Revving or accelerating hard before lubrication reaches critical parts causes metal-on-metal stress. Pistons, bearings, and valve components suffer the most during these movements. In 2026 engines with tighter tolerances, there's even less room for abuse. The correct approach is simple. Start the car, wait about 30 seconds, then drive gently for the first few miles. This allows oil and transmission fluid to warm and flow properly. 8. The hill driving habit burning your brakes alive. Many drivers stay in drive on long downhill roads and ride the brakes the entire way. I once smelled burning brakes halfway down a mountain because of this. Automatic transmissions have lower gear modes for a reason. Using them provides engine braking, which helps control speed without overheating brakes. When you stay in drive, brakes absorb most of the load, building heat fast. That heat warps rotors, wears pads, and stresses transmission fluid as the system tries to manage speed. In 2026 vehicles, brake systems are lighter and more efficient, but also more sensitive to heat buildup. Ignoring lower gears on hills leads to expensive brake repairs and unnecessary transmission stress. Dropping into a lower gear reduces heat, improves control, and protects multiple systems at once. 7. One puddle that can destroy your transmission. Driving through deep water looks harmless until it isn't. I once saw a car stall hours after crossing a flooded street. Automatic transmissions have vents to release internal pressure. On many vehicles, those vents sit low on the transmission case. When you drive through deep water, those vents can pull water inside. Once water mixes with transmission fluid, lubrication fails. The fluid turns milky, and clutch materials begin breaking down. And the next mistake destroys engines the same quiet way. 6. Skipping oil changes is the most expensive laziness. Oil changes feel easy to delay. I've heard people say they'll do it next month, then forget. Engine oil breaks down over time, collects contaminants, and loses its ability to protect internal parts. I've seen engines opened where oil turned into thick sludge, camshafts worn smooth, valves coated and buildup, all from skipped maintenance. Transmission fluid suffers the same fate. In 2026 vehicles, engines run hotter and cleaner, but that also means oil degrades faster under stress. Synthetic oil lasts longer. 5. The lifetime fluid lie that ends transmissions early. Many manufacturers advertise lifetime transmission fluid. I once believed it too. In reality, fluid degrades just like engine oil. Over time, it collects metal particles, loses cooling ability, and turns abrasive. Lifetime usually means the expected life of the transmission, not unlimited use. In 2026 automatics, precise hydraulic pressure depends on clean fluid. When fluid breaks down, shifts become delayed or rough. By the time slipping starts, damage is already severe. Many transmissions fail simply because fluid was never serviced. 4. Sitting at red lights is cooking your transmission. Sitting in drive at long stoplights feels harmless. Inside the transmission, the torque converter is still working and generating heat. On hot days or in traffic, that heat builds fast. Heat is the #1 enemy of automatic transmissions. It breaks down fluid, hardens seals, and damages clutch packs. Shifting into neutral at long stops reduces load and allows temperatures to stabilize. In 2026 vehicles that already run hotter for efficiency, managing heat matters more than ever. Many drivers experience transmission issues not from mileage, but from repeated overheating. One severe overheating event can shorten transmission life permanently. 3. Adding extra oil is worse than running low. Some drivers think adding extra oil is protective. I once watched someone pour in just a little more for safety. Overfilling oil causes the crankshaft to whip it into foam. Foamy oil doesn't lubricate properly. It creates pressure spikes, starves bearings, and can blow seals. Modern engines are designed for exact oil levels. In 2026 vehicles, excess oil can also damage sensors and catalytic inverters. The dipstick, or electronic reading, is not a suggestion, it's a measurement tool. Always check levels correctly, on level ground, and follow manufacturer guidance. More oil does not mean more protection, it means more damage. And if you think idling helps warm things up, the next mistake proves otherwise, and the next one happens every single morning. 2. Warming up your car the wrong way every morning. Many drivers let their car idle for 10 minutes thinking it's helping. I used to do this until I learned better. Modern engines and transmissions warm up faster when driven gently, not when idling. Long idling wastes fuel, increases carbon buildup, and does little to warm transmission fluid. In cold climates, transmission fluid thickens overnight and needs movement to circulate properly. The correct method is simple.
Start the car, wait about 30 seconds, then drive calmly. Avoid high revs and aggressive acceleration until temperatures rise. This warms all systems evenly and reduces internal stress. Long idling feels safe, but it actually increases wear over time. And finally, the most overlooked mistake of all.
Number 1. Flooring it cold is the fastest way to kill an automatic. Transmissions rely entirely on hydraulic fluid. When that fluid is cold, it hasn't reached every clutch and valve yet. Flooring the throttle immediately after startup forces components to work under maximum load with minimal lubrication. I once saw a nearly new car develop shifting issues simply because the driver drove aggressively every morning. Modern transmissions have sensors in adaptive logic, but they cannot protect against repeated cold abuse. The solution is simple. Start the car, let it idle briefly, then drive gently until temperatures rise. Think of it like stretching before exercise. This single habit can double transmission life. It costs nothing, takes seconds, and prevents thousands in repairs later. You don't need to drive scared, just smarter. Small changes protect the most expensive systems in your car. Click any of these videos on your screen, and I'll see you in a moment.